Okay. Thank you very much, Thomas, Christian, and Ari, for this, I think, very inspiring lectures. We have some time left for some questions. So, are there any questions? Maybe I shall shoot a first one without making it too long, but I have about 2 questions. One of the things, Christian, you said was that when a common or a group of people take the initiative to build, there is the chance that it is, or the opportunity to have a more qualitative building than when it's a project developer. But I was thinking that I think next to that we also need these competitions, like you organize them with CLTB, and like they organize it in Zurich. It's necessary at the same time, no? Or you think it's? I think it's not only the group itself that's the guarantee. It's the willing to work together in these kind of competitions.
Yeah, but the group is the client. And the client makes a brief.
Mm-hmm.
And so the brief will be different than in the case of a private developer, because the brief for the private developer will be, let's make a building that is mainstream, that many people will like, because that means that many people will be interested to buy the apartments.
Yeah.
While a group of people, so that's in the case of our group of co-housing, could have own ideas, specific programs. We want, and also in the case of cooperatives and so on, you have more chances that there will be, for instance, a collective space, or that it will be something specific. So, but that's on the part of the brief. So the brief is more special.
Mm-hmm.
And then, indeed, I agree, then you need architects also to respond to the brief, and to also just to make good architecture.
Mm-hmm.
But both go together.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a good architect, perhaps, then you're not perhaps so much challenged by building lots of standard apartments that should be mainstream and neutral and have nothing that is too strange or special, because that means that ordinary clients could be afraid to buy those apartments.
Yeah.
So you get a kind of standardization, nivellering of the architecture, while in those projects you have other opportunities. So I'm intentionally saying chances, opportunities, they do not guarantee good architecture.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
No,
but they guarantee architecture with personality.
Yeah.
So that is different.
Mm-hmm.
So the brief is more specific and different than mainstream, and so that's more interesting for architects to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add to that the effect of the competition to contribute to a culture of building it cannot be underestimated. It's like not only designs that have been realized, but also designs that have been part of competition and are published, are also ways of relating to these challenges. And what you see in Zurich, you have these big books with the Grundrisse manuals, all the floor plans, which are really, opening up the perspective of what could you wish for if you want to live, if you want to commission a house, if you want to commission a house together, and this this gradual building up of knowledge and exchange of knowledge and debating it is something which is also a very important part of this culture of competitions, definitely. Yeah.
Of course, I agree. Perhaps I was, in fact, skipping the part that competitions are important in order to improve architecture, because for me that's a basic point. But
that's for everybody.
Yeah, okay. But I was already in the next step that competition is something that is, of course, stimulating, and the fact of competition is improving the quality. But the brief is important also to have a good competition, and so when you're challenged by a good brief, by a more interesting program, of course it leads to better proposals. So mostly projects in co-housing or cooperative housing or bouwgroepen and so, they stimulate innovation and they allow for experiments.
Yeah, but they don't. I also know a lot of co-housing projects where I think the quality is not that high because they don't have the professional commissionership and they don't have this really good competition. So that's why I think both are necessary next to each other.
Yeah, but so the Bouwmeester is helping clients to organize good competitions. So if one day there would be a bouwgroep or because most of the cooperatives, of course, are in an official structure, and the structure is also professional, and so it is able to organize the competition itself, and we can help and so on. But we have then a kind of professional people to talk with. But in some cases, so we would be interested if there would be co-housing projects that are, let's say, organized bottom up, to help them to organize competition. So just call us.
I just wanted to highlight that the actual trend is also that real estate developer understanding that there is a need for some kind of collective housings are also offering new developments which then do not really represent the bottom-up approach of the collective with its own intention, but it becomes kind of the new mainstream with the new standards, just like in terms of energy or ecology or not the space, the green space in the city is central today. And so I also wanted to highlight that in terms of public developments, it's not that people that are on a social housing waiting list are not willing to be in such development. The process is not engaging them to make sure that they would fully enjoy being in innovative buildings. And so this is also how the public authorities are able to fix some kind of standards that basically make a new balance between collective and individual approach on housing. This is most of the things you've been presenting are how city, collective and privacy is rearranged. And my fear is that the trend in terms of social housing policy is a third is directly bought from the real estate developer. So let's hope they will identify that niche of new collective housing much more in the future as we are depending from them. And kind of provocative there, just knowing that you are doing your best to of course, lever a culture of those standards. But I also noticed that more and more, because of the complexity of public tender, there is this tendency to directly rely on real estate developers and then lose all the discussion.
Yeah.
Is it possible? I have a question on the link between all these generous circulation spaces and shared spaces in the projects we saw, and then the goal of affordability, because this project must be not cheap enough, I think, for the public of Brussels CLT project. Okay, the projects we saw are mainly in Zurich and Munich and Cera, which I don't associate with the Brussels public of CLT project. So is it realistic to show these projects when we are talking about CLT public and cooperative housing?
And you mean more in general when we talk about affordable housing?
Yeah, affordable housing, and then so much, all the generosity and the architecture. Is it realistic if we have to deal with the Brussels CLT?
Well, I've been trying to focus on that aspect, even though it was, I understand, very technical, but the idea was how to reach direct affordability and permanent affordability through time. You've been mentioning that now those cooperatives are new, so they are strictly rental social rental, but still rentals, because they need to secure the capital, because they knew those cooperatives. But in 20 years' time, they probably be new stakeholders able to invest and come with self-managed affordability. But today, as there are no cooperatives that are already playing in that game, or not that much, all the historical ones here in Brussels have been reintegrated to the social housing policy. So that new trend of new cooperative, as they are starting, they rely on public fundings, and that's why I came with all my schemes. On one hand, like the public authority come with a land policy to make sure that in terms of affordability and price control is guaranteed, and then trying to partnership with cooperatives in terms of program, of self-management of the building and empowering perspective. But at the very basic is what are the tools, where is the best way to invest the money to guarantee that affordability, but also let that creativity from cooperatives to happen.
Maybe to add to that, it's true. You know, also the difference in investment level, especially in Zurich. You cannot compare it to the level of investment in housing here in Belgium and the Netherlands. I think that's a big difference. This element of time that you mentioned is here. But in Munich and also in Zurich, these projects are very mixed. So it's not per se social housing. It's also not only middle class housing. It's the mix that makes them generous, I would say. And this mix is achieved in Munich, for instance. That they have a policy in which they have segmented different parts of the housing market, which all come with a different land price and also with different conditions on what the maximum amount of rent per square meter per month could be, related to a city subsidy or not, you know, a portional subsidy or a subsidy of the project. So this whole, in the Netherlands we have a very strict separation between the social housing sector and the free market. But this mixture is really something which should be organized also institutionally to enable these generosity in the projects in a broader sense. I think that's something
I sort of feel that we've got very close with the three presentations to the story that we need to tell to change the mindset both of political decision makers and ordinary people. You've brought us very close to an understanding of how this could happen, and for me, but I don't think we're quite there. And I think we need that story in order to rapidly change the mindset. And for me, the key is somewhere in the anti-speculative rules, because the build-up of capital depends on that. And sort of I know we're not supposed to be focusing on the money, but somehow, if you can't convince Belgian homeowners or potential homeowners, and if you can't convince the city planners and so on that this is possible, then the inspiring dream isn't going to happen. And so I'd like to just ask Thomas to go back to his 25% and 75% and explain to me simply how
that's one declination of the CLT model, which is providing ownership, individual or co-ownership, to poor or small. Okay, so that resale formula is applied to a way for also to privately own. What we were all about, and that I tried to lead you to, was the use of CLT to found cooperative schemes. Yes. But if you ask me to come back on the ownership, do you want a kind of better explanation of how it works?
Or in the cooperative, where you've got CLT as the basis for a cooperative. So how does the anti-speculative
Yeah, so really the idea of what I was trying to highlight just before as well is, as those cooperatives are not able with their own finance that is non-existent because they're new, if you want to make things affordable, you need to have some investment in public money. The question is how that investment of public money do not avoid innovativeness, democratization, anti-speculation. Many housing policies are very supporting of the middle class with no kind of any return. So, and my belief is that historically state-owned land, all Zurich cooperative has been first launched thanks to the municipality providing land. Today, land is kind of rare here in the city. So, or you provide money to buy land, or you provide land, but you need, and I think land policy is the right tool to precisely offer a splitting in the policies between, as public authority, I put investment only on the land. I do not buy and finance the whole policy, but that offers me the respect of long-term anti-speculative rules, if it's the desire of the policy makers, of course, which is not obvious always neither, but that's a good way to regulate through the very long-term perspective on control on land. But then if you split and that there's no public financing on the in building of the land, you may even go outside of the public tender and engage a new dialogue between the culture of real estate developers and those new kind of clients in a more flexible way that you would do in public tender only, not pretending that it should not also penetrate the culture of the public tender. But this is also another interesting aspect of that splitting of the land and the brick. And it also in terms of responsibility, those clients, the cooperatives, could develop those projects in private, meaning also most of the time cheaper, even though, of course, public tender tends to select the cheaper, but in such a context that it is, at the end of the day, not really cheaper. Anyway, so what I mean is a way to organize the lock of public funding being in the land, fix the condition of affordability, could be even other elements of programmatic elements. That's what they do in Barcelona today. They have 100-page of, it's not on every call, depending on the innovativeness of the architect, is for all public ground that would be provided in that cooperative program. There is a very large range of conditions which may, for instance, discuss the proportion of collective spaces, the kind of sympathicness, and things like that. Not on every call, for all of the implementing that collective visions into the housing policy, you see. And so, well, I don't know if I kind of answered a bit better.
I appreciate very much that you say we need two ways of shifting mindset.
Yeah.
On the level of public authority, but also on the people looking for dwelling. And so I think indeed, so what if public authority is owning land now, so the model is to sell it. So that's why we are selling Josaphat, that's why CTDF is selling the land that they acquire for building projects and so on, to individual owners in that case. Public authority should change, especially in Belgium, its mindset. If we have land, let's keep it. Let's keep it forever. Let's perhaps make it disposable on with long-term leases of 99 years, but after 99 years it will come back to us, and we can, if we want, control speculation or go against speculation, or we will be around the table. If we sell it now, we won't be on the table anymore. So that's on one side. The other side is that the people buying an apartment of CityDev they are getting a subsidy now, so it's cheaper, so it's oriented middle class, but it's cheaper and so on. They should shift their mind as well. They should say, okay, I have the opportunity to have a cheaper apartment, to live in Brussels and in good places and so on, it will be cheaper. But then I have to change part of my attitude as well. I can't expect that I will be owner in the Belgian traditional sense, that I own everything. So I have to accept that I will be only leaseholder of the land for 99 years. So for us Belgians, that's completely strange. But it exists in other countries. And so that's where the mentality has to shift as well. And both levels are blocking each other.
And also that there might be some limit on what on your ability simply to sell it in 10 years or 20 years time to whoever can pay the most.
That's how I understand the 225 and the 75% rule. So you're allowed to have part of the increasing value.
But where does the rest go?
But no, the rest,
But so
75% remains in the CLT.
Yeah, it remains the CLT. What is interesting about it is not that let's sell the city gardens that are very attractive and are very expensive to buy some new cheaper social housing in the suburbs. That's not the point. It's both social housing programs, but also a commitment to make one place in the city, in the context of rights to the city, forever controlled and affordable.
Yes.
So there's a commitment not to sell it back for economical reason, and then I sell all, because that's also why we've been losing all the public control on land. That was for short-term economical thinking. And so the commitment on CLT is once we invest in a place, even if it's gentrified in the future, they will still have some space for that collective and social program. So that's very important as well.
And in time, you build up the capital that allows you to expand that, to scale up.
And so here the debate in CLT, the way we've been informed about CLT, is a balance between very general collective interest of anti-speculation, that aspect of communities is not intentionalities of a co-housing that we all vegetarians, bikers, it is just commitment to sell at cheap price when you understand. And then it's ownership, so it's kind of liberal in a way, which is fine for me. It's just saying you secure your own capital, you are able to move. Sometimes people do not move from social housing because to go in the jungle of a private market would be terrible, so they prefer even sometimes not having the job instead of losing the housing. Here, if you want to move, you have a capital, okay? So it is emancipatory in that very capitalist perspective as well. It's offering the poor to be small capitalists playing fair rules, which is something you can't ask to the one in control. You see? But then when it's about building with cooperative, it's all kind of new perspectives possible, of course. And there are tricks, and then you may reinvest elements of intentionalities and thinking in terms of co-housing. But per se, CLT is about land control. It is not about how to design lovely co-housing projects. It may become now through the new schemes.
Okay, one last question, because we, yeah.
To follow up on that, then why is it necessary that the CLT owns the land, or why we cannot the continent own the land?
Yeah, but that's my personal perspective on that is CLT should not be used to develop public land, as the public land is already under public control. It should be a tool to buy these expensive land we let in the market, or that we've been even selling back to the market, and develop a new land policy. As it is a cheaper policy, we should use it to gain more control on private land. That's my first answer. But there is also a competition between all the public stakeholders on the public land, and why not having a little place for CLT? Why not? But the purpose is first of all, that it is a tool for a cheap tool to gain control on private land. And if I let my heart speak, what I love about CLT is that tripartite governance, which is a way to engage people in a project, which is a way to what I call the public common governance, where the public authority have all the control to make sure it's affordable forever, and that so it's not that there's a loss of public control, but there's a culture of co-governance with the beneficiaries of the policy and all the neighborhood, meaning what compose the city. And in that sense, I appreciate it as being a new way of managing a public policy.
Yeah, because I think on controlling the land, it would be enough that just the government is owning the land.
Yeah.
But his next step, because of course he's in the CLT, is saying that he wants also to change the way of governance, so that it's not just public authority government who's doing governance, but that the governance is shared with citizens, with associations and so on. And that was a big debate. You're pointing out something that is very touchy.
And if I have to speak for my own city, Rotterdam, where I come from, unfortunately, I have to say we can't trust the government with these public goals. You know,
that's the idea that is behind.
That's really a sad story because they're selling out not only their land but also what we call maatschappelijk vastgoed. So the real estate that is publicly owned is sold on the market for market prices to increase the budget of the one time the budget of the city. And even Rotterdam decided, like it's almost 8 years ago now, to convert all the land leases to contracts for sale. So they don't want the land lease any longer. They have a policy, an exceptional policy of selling land, which you can do one time and then it's over.
If I may just add one no, but that's why I think it's really an opportunity. Like CLTB being that's the Habitat Award is also the region. It's not about innovativeness of associations only. It's
co-governance.
It's
and the region is also in the governance.
Of course, it's central. It is central, and so if it supports cooperative schemes, and as we discussed, cooperative in the future will be resilient to offer new affordable investment without new public money. We need to use that small framework before the real crisis and the inflation and the impossibility to invest any public money in anything. We should take this narrow window we have today to launch as much as we can cooperatives. Okay.